you've got to hit the go live button 16 times before you go live on this stream. But we're here. Welcome to the Dynasty Dummies Rookie Hootenanny 2025, presented by Fantasy Cares. We're back for a catch-all. We are, this is the audience participation portion. So you have given us running backs to watch, whether it was DMs, whether it was suggestions in the chat, whether you walked up to me on the street. Well, I didn't walk up to you because I'm not walking right now. Whether you found me on the street and said, hey, we need to watch Bhayshul Tuten, like, we're here. This is the fun part of the program, at least for me, because it's the interaction. It's getting people what they actually want to hear about outside of the top 12 at each position. So going to be a fun night, JMic. I'm glad you're here. I'm excited to talk at least some of these guys.
Running backs, gotta catch them all. Yeah, listen, it's the catch-all episode. This is the one that we don't always look forward to, Zach, because while it is audience participation and it's fun, and we get the opportunity to dive a little bit deeper than typical, this is a year unlike any other. This feels almost like when my wife is watching The Bachelor or Bachelorette and they say, this is the most dramatic season in Bachelor history. This may be the deepest, most impressive, most fun catch-all, Zach? Question mark?
Yeah, I don't think there's any question that it's the deepest. We were just talking pre-show, and I said that there are 16 running backs in this class that I'm interested in putting on a fantasy team. I don't remember the last draft where there were 16 players I was interested in putting on a fantasy team. And we've got 16 running backs. Now, the draft is going to shake some of that out because we're still looking for first 3-round capital. Although with running backs, there's a little bit of leeway where if we like a player and they go late, you get that discount in the draft, and it's not a great hit rate, but it's something I'm willing to play with for, a week or 2 or 3 of production, whereas you wouldn't get that with wide receiver. But like, this is a really deep class and a really good class, and it's a lot of fun. And Andrew Cooper, Coupe Fiasco says 2017. 2017 was better at the top for sure. 2017, like I had CMC at 1, I had Dalvin Cook at 2, I had Joe Mixon at 3, I had Fournette. I actually even had I had gotten so many fights about Kareem Hunt. Kyle liked Samaje Perine. I was a Kareem Hunt disciple. Turns out we were both wrong. It was really Alvin Kamara. But the top of that group was better. But this group is so deep that I just can't wrap my brain around it. Like, there's so many running backs who can contribute. And the thing that 2017 did was set off that renaissance of running back where, for the longest time, it was zero RB came into fashion in 2013. You had the 2014 class, which reinforced it. Everybody was drafting running backs. If you were listening to DLF, or if you were listening to the nerds, or if you were listening to football guys, or wherever you were, it was take wide receiver early until 2017 hit. And then we got into robust RB because we had, 2016, you had Zeke. 2017, you had everybody. 2018, you had Chubb. You had Saquon Barkley. And so this is that cycle coming back to here we are, running backs.
And interestingly enough, Zach, we're in this era where running backs have taken a back seat in the NFL's salary cap. Running backs have taken a back seat in terms of having top billing within their offenses as a primary headliner. Committees have taken over the world. It almost feels like the year 2199 or something, but here we are in 2025, and don't look now, but running backs may just be back in style. So this is going to be a fun one to be able to go through, Zach. Before we get into the actual film grades, before we get into talking about what we've seen on the tape, what or do you have any musings? Because we know that couch has great use, which means your brain has plenty to be able to spill out for everyone's benefit.
Yeah, I don't get to think as much on my commute because it's from this side of the couch to that side of the couch.
Mhm.
But I do have a lot more time to think. The first thing is, and you said this class could change things. Be a little patient and let it change things, because even that 2017 class came in with players in front of them. CMC started in a committee. Kamara started in a committee. Mixon started in a committee. Like, this is a class that should take over, but don't be counting on every single one of these players starting off. The other thing that I've been thinking of, and it was funny, I got a new credit card. I got in my wallet because I have one check in my wallet to be able to put my bank account in to pay off things that I need. And I found a slip of paper, and written on it, this is the only thing written on it: judging decisions by how they were made, not by how they turned out. And I was like, wow, that was really smart, past Zach. I'm glad you left this for me. And it started me thinking about how easy it is to crush someone for their takes, especially at this time of year. Crush somebody for, say, having Rondell Moore up at the top of a wide receiver class. But the reasons for crushing them are not because Rondell Moore failed. I think that it's important to look back at the process. It's important to look back that the reasons why he failed were, or the things that pointed to him failing were, the single season of production, the use of him as a quasi scat back, the need to scheme him touches, and even his size to a lesser extent, because players can overcome that, but it's a little more rare. I think it's similar to the Puka Nacua miss, even though Puka Nacua wasn't a miss. There were so many things pointing to Puka Nacua being not what he became. The late capital, the mediocre production metrics, the average tape. Like, there were a lot of things pointing to Puka Nacua. If you didn't believe in that 1 week at the Senior Bowl and like one single yards per team pass attempt or yards per route run, if you didn't believe in that one single metric and this 1 week, it's really hard to see that coming. So I think that judging decisions by how they were made, not how they turned out, becomes really important when you talk about process. And to me, the process of rookie season is really important. Whether you're listening to us, whether you're listening to Waldman, who just dropped his report today, whether you're listening to JJ Zacharyson, whether you're listening to Peter Howard, whether you're listening to Coop, doesn't matter who you're listening to. Their process and the refinement of their process will give you more success more often if they're taking the time to go back and revise, revisit, understand why things happened, and update, be willing to be flexible, but also not change for things that are, not change for the Puka Nacua. If you're chasing Puka Nacua in this draft class, you're going to be disappointed. And I'm sorry. I want there to be a Puka Nacua every class. I do. There isn't. And so it's that understanding where we need to figure out how decisions are made to get to the end result rather than working backward from an end result to the decision.
Zach, that is so spot on in a myriad of ways, one of which there was a quote from Inky Johnson that I heard today, and I I wrote it out and shared it with some folks at work, but then I also wanted to make sure that we at least addressed it this evening. And what you just said in reference to process is so important. The quote is, he says, and I quote, "Just work. And if you don't get what you thought you were going to get, show up and still go to work. Along the process, what's more important, what you acquire or who you become?" A lot of people think what they acquire is the thing that makes them who they are. No, it's who you become in the process of chasing what you want to acquire. Most importantly, approach it and eliminate the outcome. Go for it, work, go to work, end quote. And so much of what you just encapsulated, Zach, and I'm hoping that folks can grasp whether this is your first ever episode of hearing us here with the Dynasty Dummies with our rookie Hootenanny, or you've caught every single episode since long before I was a twinkle in my father's eye, or whatever the saying is. The fact of the matter is, we're thankful that we can be a part of your process. But remember that we are simply a part of your process. Don't live and die by what we say. We are a couple of guys not being handsomely compensated to share our thoughts with you in terms of what we see. Because, one, we have an affinity for each other. Zach and I, brothers for life. That's without question. But also the fact that we really enjoy this process of going in, seeing what we see on film, writing it down, watching game after game after game, thought after thought, second guessing some things and going back and looking again. We enjoy this. And so we enjoy being able to put out film grades for you all to make as a part of your process. But this is not be all end all. This is part of it. We know that obviously pro days have taken place. We know that the combine's taken place. We know that the NFL draft is going to have a lot to say in reference to draft capital and what teams are saying about no longer being able to lie. They're actually having to put draft picks to names and names to draft picks and compensation in that way. So thank you all for joining us. We're grateful to have you with us, and understand, just go in there and put in the work. The outcome is going to be the outcome. But if you can be confident in the process that you took to get to the area that you wanted to be in, I think more often than not, you're going to enjoy where you land. So with that, 6 more running backs, Zach. And as Zach previously mentioned, the goal is for us to be able to have at least one more Hootenanny, one more episode for a catch-all, to be able to talk some more names that we know that you all are excited about. And maybe there are more that we haven't gotten to that you want to hear. Shout them out. We'd love to still hear. We know we have the Jack Beshes of the world, perhaps even the Xavier Restrepos, which we've yet to talk about here on the Hootenanny. But today, it's running backs. We're playing Pokemon. We're catching them all. And we've got 6 to bring to you. Those 6 are LeQuint Allen out of Syracuse. We've got Damien Martinez, formerly of Oregon State, most recently for the University of Miami. We've got DJ Giddens, Kansas State, the Little Apple, if you will. We've got Bhayshul Tuten, Virginia Tech. We've got Brashard Smith, SMU. And last, and maybe whose star has fallen the furthest, but possibly being resurrected with what's happened of late, radio rocket Raheim Sanders, most recently out of South Carolina, formerly of Arkansas, from his Devi greatness years there. But let's start with LeQuint Allen. LeQuint Allen, really interesting prospect in that plays for a Syracuse team that was not on the map these last several years, except this past season they got out to a hot start and started doing some really positive things. They had Kyle McCord transfer there from Ohio State, and the offense all of a sudden became relevant. Fran Brown, the head coach, lots of good things happening up there for the Orange. LeQuint Allen, 6 feet, 204. It's numbers that I found there for him. He jumped 35 inches in the vertical jump at the combine, 10-foot broad jump. Really interesting piece here in reference to his performance, Zach, because in 2023, and in 2024. Very similar numbers. He averaged 4.3 yards in 2023, 4.5 yards in this latest season, 2024. In 2023, 1,064 yards on 245 carries. 2024, 1,021 yards on 228 carries. Thing is, 26 touchdowns over 2 seasons. That'll open some eyes. And moreover, Zach, in 3 seasons at Syracuse, he amassed 119 receptions. I'll say that one more time. 119 receptions in 3 seasons, with his best season being this 2024 year, 64 catches for 521 yards and 4 scores. Zach, LeQuint Allen, floor is yours.
I was caught off guard by LeQuint Allen. I've got to tell you, if there are 23 people in a room together, there's a 50% chance that 2 of them have the same birthday. That's wild, right? It seems impossible because the chance of 2 people having different birthdays is over 99%. But with 23 people creating pairs, there are actually 253 unique combinations, and ultimately just a 49.95% chance of no matching birthdays. In a class with nearly 20 viable running backs, LeQuint Allen was bound to happen. Allen is dynamic. He has enough speed and vision to consistently win off tackle and even get to the edge. Between the tackles, Allen cuts quickly to the hole, and then he goes. And once he hits the open field, he'll set up defenders with angles and changes of pace before he accelerates. LeQuint Allen is even a factor in the passing game, as you mentioned, JMic, squaring up defenders on both blitzes and straight pass blocks, but also catching nearly everything thrown his way. He's always a danger to add yards after the catch as well. So much dynamism in that slightly smaller back.
Yeah, and it's weird because you think 6 feet, 204, 207, depending upon who's saying so. I think there are moments where he plays smaller than 6 feet, 204, and there are moments where I think that he's giving the effort and shows you, oh, there's a little punch that he's packing when it comes to his game. And I think that so many of the things that I tend to gravitate to shine in LeQuint Allen's game. For me, I believe that his vision is plus. I really like the way that he's able to problem solve and diagnose what's happening at the line of scrimmage quickly, find space, and be able to problem solve in that sense when it comes to traffic around him or holes opening and closing quickly. I'm also a big fan of what he's able to do, obviously, in the receiving game, with the fact that he's, again, the 64 catches, 119, I think it was, total catches in his career. I like what he offers there, but the other piece of that, Zach, and something that I think that you tend to gravitate toward and tend to point out, I feel like year in and year out, his pass protection is pretty good. I don't see him getting bullied all too often. He's giving effort in that reference. I think there are lots of pluses to LeQuint Allen's game, and I think that he has more creativity than the average back in this class, and that, for me, brings a lot of hope, especially if there's any kind of draft capital that comes his way. He's a guy that I'm pretty excited to have on my team, but what weaknesses did you see in LeQuint Allen's game?
Well, so one of LeQuint Allen's calling cards is his burst to the line of scrimmage, but even that can get him in trouble sometimes and cause problems. There are times when Allen gets started so quickly that he gets to the line of scrimmage before the emergent cutback lanes happen. When opposing defenses get penetration early in a play, Allen sometimes has trouble getting past that initial tackler. He lacks that little crossover to win, I think, in tight quarters. He's also susceptible to being tackled low, often getting tripped up when there's still more opportunity to add yards. Allen isn't quite that prototypical size for a bell cow, just cresting 200 pounds, and he could end up beginning his career as a pass catcher paired with a more physical back. But don't mistake that for downside. Allen looks every bit the pass catcher plus profile, with room to grow into more carries. His birthday is August 5th, by the way, the same day as James Gunn's, Neil Armstrong's, Patrick Ewing, and maybe yours. I don't know.
Not mine, which is okay. I am okay being the anomaly here. I do think one of the striking pieces, Zach, and I didn't tell you about this beforehand, but one of the things that I found interesting in reference to LeQuint Allen, I actually was just having some fun going back and watching more Ashton Genty tape. Just because I just enjoy it. It's a fun thing to do. And I had a little bit of time the other day in the midst of a storm. And so I had pulled up some Ashton Genty film that we had previously gone through. And unfortunately, I watched LeQuint Allen after I watched Ashton Genty. And part of the problem for me was the contact balance that Ashton Genty shines all over the place. It's such a stark difference than what we see out of LeQuint Allen. He doesn't have the same pinball ability to take hit, absorb hits, be able to ricochet and continue forward with his momentum. I feel like so many instances he was not able to chain moves together after being contacted, like you were mentioning, specifically below the line, below the waist. I do think that there is a place for LeQuint Allen in the league. I don't know if he's necessarily a 1A in a committee. However, I do think that he offers a lot of plus to any backfield that he's in. LeQuint Allen could shake some things up if you're not careful. Humbly submitted. Moving on, and let's talk a little bit of Damien Martinez. Damien Martinez goes to the combine, measures in 6 feet, 217. So pretty stout looking fella there. Runs a 4.51, 35-inch vertical, 10.4 broad jump. So not the greatest of athletes, but from a production standpoint, he was flat out getting it done. He had 2 seasons at Oregon State, one of which where he ran for 1,185 yards. And then he transfers to Miami, the offense that Cam Ward built, and doesn't necessarily see as much shine per se as maybe the track that he was on in reference to workload, but on his 159 carries at Miami, 1,002 yards, averaging 6.3 yards per touch, doesn't get Zach Reed rule approved when it comes to catches in a given season. His best season was this past season. 17 catches, 204 yards, no scores in the receiving game. That said, Damien Martinez is not a small player, Zach. He is here for violence.
The most famous bobsled track in the world is in St. Moritz, Switzerland. It first opened in 1904. It's also the only naturally refrigerated track. The mile-long sluiceway is carved each year out of snow-covered ice, dropping nearly 430 feet downhill. It's this slope, this downhill cant that brings sleds careening down at 90-plus miles an hour. Damien Martinez is no stranger to getting downhill, and once he gets his 217 pounds moving, look out. Martinez shines as an interior runner, making decisive cuts, and identifying open holes quickly. Once he's up to speed, Martinez blows through arm tackles with ease. If he's not contacted, Martinez seems to pick up momentum with every step. There may not be another back in the 2025 class who finishes runs better than Damien Martinez. He routinely punishes tacklers, delivering a hit as a parting gift for the defender taking him down.
Shades of, and I don't want to do the whole comp thing, Zach, but just shades of when you talk about punishing at the end of runs. I think so much of Isaiah Pacheco, in that Isaiah Pacheco is just fury when he was healthy and things were good in past seasons for him. Damien Martinez reminds me so much in that respect when it comes to being able to build up and having that fury, and maybe he doesn't have the same acceleration like Pacheco, which is kind of where that falls apart, but specifically in the set of bringing violence, bringing decisiveness, and specifically between the tackles. This is a player that is going to consistently get what's blocked. And I think that while he's not game breaker, consistently busting through and breaking off chunk runs, I do think that his ferocity has a place to be able to have him consistently getting first and second down work, if nothing else, sparingly. I really love, while he doesn't necessarily pass protect well, I do like that he has a frame that hopefully allows him to be able to perhaps get on the field for third downs, even though he didn't get an opportunity to exhibit the pass catching many instances at Miami. And it's not to say that he's going to be some third down maven when he gets to the league, but I do like all that he brings from a pure effort, run game, man scheme type of player. I really like what he has to offer in that respect. What opportunities, though, Zach, did you see in Damien Martinez's game, especially when we think through guy who's not likely to see a ton in the passing game?
Yeah, even though Damien Martinez dishes out his share of hits, he can be taken down relatively easily because of his upright running style. I think he ends up being susceptible to being tackled low. In close quarters, Martinez manages to escape with a combination of power, subtle cuts, and vision, but I think he's far less creative once he gets out in space. And you would think that would be the opposite. You'd think it'll be easier to run in space, but man, I think Martinez is so much better in a phone booth. Nearly all of his success comes between the tackles because he doesn't have the speed or quick cutting ability to maneuver off tackle or outside, often getting strung out to the sideline when he tries. And you mentioned it already that he doesn't have a lot of passing chops. I think he's probably a non-factor in the passing game. During the Olympics, the events are scheduled so that luge goes down the track first because it does the least damage. Damien Martinez is a four-man bobsled, a bruising back who gets downhill fast and does the maximum amount of damage. I think he's probably best suited to an early down role, potentially with some goal line carries, but that archetype is really difficult to truly be a difference maker for PPR fantasy football.
I'm curious, Zach, when and I don't want to put you on the spot, but I'm curious if you have thoughts on any players, whether it be current NFL players or even prospects that we've watched that have had or that you project to have a high fantasy ceiling that isn't necessarily breaking off all of the long runs, big chunk runs, and also not typically productive in the passing game.
Yeah, and I think that's the rub is you've got to do one or the other. You've got to be explosive one way or the other in order to produce for fantasy, or you've got to get 350 carries. And I just don't see Damien Martinez being and even the players that are getting the huge carry numbers, it's Derrick Henry, it's Nick Chubb. Those are guys who get those long chunk runs, can lightning strike. And so it's really hard to see a world where as good a runner as Damien Martinez is inside, it's really difficult for fantasy to evaluate that as a real win.
Mm. And I think that's I won't belabor the point because I think that you highlighted a lot of his opportunities well. I'm just trying to put myself in the space of, okay, it's May, whatever. Our drafts have happened, and maybe Damien Martinez gets. Let's be generous. Let's put him early day 3. He's a round 4 pick to somewhere, Dallas, wherever you want to put him, where he has an opportunity to get a lot of work. I'm just trying to understand, at least for myself, and maybe this isn't the space to do this thought exercise, but when we think about the things that he does well, where does the upside come from if he's not going to get a ton of work and he's not necessarily the goal line option? I think those are the things that you have to hope for. And in those respects, that doesn't necessarily sound like 1A type of player in a committee. That said, some of the things that he does do well, I think have a place, obviously, on an NFL roster. So Damien Martinez, interesting player, productive player there for the Hurricanes. Next up on the evening, back number 3 that we'll talk through, and spoiler alert, probably my favorite watch of this group. For me, DJ Giddens. We are looking at Kansas State's finest. Well, maybe Darren Sproles was the finest, but DJ Giddens, pretty good player in his own right when we think about what he brings to the table. 6 feet, 212 pounds, redshirt junior, and at the combine runs the 4.43, 39.5-inch vertical jump, 10.10 broad jump. Pretty good athlete, Zach. Good top end speed with the 4.43, and I think that so often with what he was able to put on tape at Kansas State, especially in this final season, we got to see that long speed be put on tape at a good rate. 205 carries, 1,343 yards, and 7 touchdowns in this final season at Kansas State. 23 total touchdowns over 3 seasons in the rushing game, and 2 years where he totaled over 20 receptions. This past season, 21 catches for 258 yards and a score. Zach, we're talking about a player in DJ Giddens that's really got a lot of steam of late in reference to what he was able to do at the combine. And while not necessarily mocked to go super high, showed the athleticism that could possibly get him opportunities in the NFL offense of hopefully which dreams are made of. DJ Giddens, Zach, go.
Some pitchers have effortless velocity. Walter Johnson did, early career Daniel Bard, Ben Joyce, Pedro. The ball comes flying out of their hands, seams whistling, screaming towards the batter, even though it appears that they're barely even trying. I always call that easy fast. And DJ Giddens is easy fast. The smooth acceleration that Giddens has in space takes defenders by surprise too, but he's also tremendous in traffic. His vision seems to get better the more defenders that you put around him, and Giddens does a very good job picking through that traffic as well, getting his feet up and out of trouble often. On the outside and off tackle, Giddens is also very patient, which you don't necessarily think of with a really fast accelerator, but he is. He lets his line set up multi-level blocks before he hits that accelerator, and that really serves him well, adding those extra yards.
And Zach, one of the reasons I'm such a fan of DJ Giddens' game is, and when we talk about this year in and year out, but those folks who see beyond the level that they're currently in or entering, he's able to see almost all of the chess pieces on the board and what he's able to do from a creativity standpoint in the open space with the speed and acceleration that he has, even as a smooth mover. And it's funny because I have the exact same words written down, easy speed. DJ Giddens is someone who does not need a ton of opportunities to make the most of his fantasy impact in an NFL offense and on our fantasy rosters. I think that he did prove, obviously, with the opportunity that he was given at Kansas State, 223 carries in 2023 and 205 carries in 2024, that he can consistently be someone that can be relied upon to do just about anything that you need, in his elusivity and footwork that he's able to leverage. Again, picking through the trash, like you even mentioned, Zach, makes him one of my favorite watches in the class, and truly a player that I think is, at least in the landscape of the big fantasy podcast or big fantasy media, just someone who I think is routinely overlooked. And I'm not in the podcasting streets the way that I used to be, where I was listening to everyone and every piece of content that I could. but I'm not hearing a ton of DJ Giddens, and I think that might make him criminally underrated for how I perceive his game to be. That said, he's a catch-all back, Zach. not a first or second day of our running backs group, Zach. Doesn't mean that his film doesn't say so. We'll see that here soon. But what do you have to say about his drawbacks?
Well, the easiest way to rack up points, both in an NFL context and in fantasy leagues, is to score touchdowns. DJ Giddens struggles with this, and more specifically, he struggles with goal line work. As fast as he is, I think he hesitates when making decisions inside the 10, looking for that perfect hole rather than hitting the one that's there. He also employs, and this drives me nuts, he employs a spin move, which diminishes his vision, opens him up to being hit really hard. As a receiver, Giddens runs routes like he doesn't want the ball sometimes. He's often slow to present a target or quick to sit with the defender. It's not that he's not a good pass catcher. I don't think he's a great route runner. And when asked to protect the quarterback, Giddens lets defenders swing him like the door to the snack cupboard. Like, just get open. I'm going after the cookies. In an era of more prevalent split backfields, I think DJ Giddens fits right in. He could succeed early as the lightning half of a running back tandem, seeing efficient touches and enough space to reel off chunk yardage. He probably doesn't ever take control of an entire backfield, but I don't think that matters. I think there's definitely fantasy point potential with DJ Giddens.
Not a consistent tackle breaker. And as you said, and man, you call that man a turnstile. That's wild. It's almost like he's a saloon door, just kind of hanging out. And it's funny, Zach, and I think that maybe in this instance, one of the few times where I think that we see a player a little bit differently, because I do think, for me, I do think that his upside says that he can be the top side of a committee, and I don't think that he's flashed enough in the passing game to be someone that says, hey, the backfield is mine. But I do think that if you give him the opportunity to play make and consistently be able to, even behind not very good offensive lines, just being able to find space, being able to get the opportunities that he can get to hit longer runs and really chunk gains for an offense, I think good things are in store for DJ Giddens in that respect. And I'm excited.
Let the man H-N. Let the man H-N, you know?
If only, man. I had H-N rated so high. I'm still really happy about who he has become, and hopefully he continues. But golly, yes, one of those instances where maybe less is more. Less maybe more. Okay, we're getting into the last three, folks, for today's catch-all, and probably a name that people have been waiting for us to get to for probably maybe not since the first episode, because the combine I don't think happened yet for our first running back episode. But here we are, y'all. We're here. Bhayshul Tuten. Y'all wanted it. You got it. We're here. Virginia Tech running back, 5'9", 206. Goes to the combine. Oh, just casually running a 4.32. No big deal. 4.32 40. Oh, casually jumps 40.5-inch vertical. Whatever. Broad jump 10. Okay. Speed's there, folks. Someone who's flat out getting it done in that regard. When we're looking at Bhayshul Tuten, again, out of Virginia Tech, and his first two seasons, I should say 2021 and 2022, he was at North Carolina A&T. Transfers to Virginia Tech, where that first season, 173 carries for 863 yards in 2023. And then the light came on, something fierce. Only 10 more carries in 2024, but 1,159 yards, Zach, on the ground for 15 touchdowns and 50 catches over those two seasons at Virginia Tech, totaling for 4 touchdowns and 320 yards. Zach, Bhayshul Tuten might have been buried and might have been a nice gem that perhaps some folks may have been thinking, oh, nobody's talking about him. And as soon as he went to the combine, folks started doing their research, and all of a sudden, everything's coming up Bhayshul. What do you got?
Even before that, the way draftniks talk, it might seem like Bhayshul Tuten sprang up out of the grass at Lad Peoples Stadium in Mobile, dominated Senior Bowl week, and then sprinted straight to Indianapolis for the combine. In reality, he was the 2020 South Jersey Times Offensive Player of the Year in high school. He ran for 1,363 yards in his sophomore season at North Carolina A&T and started all 24 games of his Virginia Tech career. Tuten's been here. Doing damage in space is a skill that has become coveted in the NFL. Offenses spread things out, and Tuten is surely a space back. He is patient behind the line of scrimmage, but when Tuten sees his opportunity to get upfield, he gets through the hole quickly. He is a quick cutter, often sneaking through the line before defenses are even aware that he is there. And Tuten has secondary acceleration also once he's into that second level of a defense, and he uses that speed to stay ahead of defenders.
Angle breaker.
Yes, sir.
The acceleration that he's able to consistently show, and as you said, Zach, maybe the most striking piece of his game is the way that when he makes the decision to go, it's up. And he is consistently catching the defense off guard time and again. And not just in the first half of games when things are happening, but in the second half when they've had the entire game to be able to adjust to what's happening, they still are not able to consistently do things with him at the line of scrimmage. And when he's able to actually find space, good things consistently happen for Tuten. I do think that when we think about his footwork, and you even mentioned in reference to his cutting ability, you do have typically folks who have different styles of cuts, like big looping jump cuts and things of that nature. He is a sharp cutter through and through consistently. That is how he does it. He is not wasting time. He is not wasting motion in that regard. And so what he's able to bring to offenses will allow him and afford him the opportunity that, again, I don't need a ton of touches to be fantasy viable. Tuten is going to bring that to fantasy offenses. But again, Zach, there's a reason that we're waiting till the day to get to Bhayshul. Drawbacks in his game. What do you got?
One of the markers of being a space back is being in and being successful on third downs and passing situations. And this is where Tuten falls just a little flat. While he's adequate enough as a pass catcher, he's not a true addition to the receiving game. And Tuten absolutely struggles as a pass blocker. His lack of power seeps into his running ability as well, showing up when Tuten is unable to break tackles, especially when he miscuts into a wall of defenders. He does that every now and then. Although his cutting often gets him in space, his dynamism doesn't always translate there in the second level. So he's really fast at the second level, but I don't think he's a great cutter at the second level. So he has to take that angle early or he's in some trouble. Tuten is a hot name, and he burned up the combine with that 4.32 40. He owns the Virginia Tech single game rushing record and is firmly on draft radars from the NFL to your dynasty leagues now. In the right system, I think Bhayshul Tuten could be an efficient space back to start with even a little more juice behind a solid blocking unit.
Solid blocking unit is important. Space is important for space backs. And I think one of the things, Zach, that we often saw, or that I often saw, when there's not space to be had for Bhayshul, he really likes to bounce outside. And while he has the tools to be able to do so, that is not a recipe for fantasy success at the next level, to consistently bounce when there is not space to be had between the tackles. and his pass protection, I don't know if I'll say it's the worst that we've seen.
Pretty bad.
But it is bottom 2 that I've seen in this group, and maybe not. I don't know.
I don't think I've seen anybody be run over as consistently as Tuten.
And look, I've even seen some film where, like, I think it was Portland. Portland State. Somebody ran through Ashton Genty. I've watched Ashton Genty get pummeled a few times on film in Pass Pro. And Tuten, I mean, resistance is a thing, I'm told, but I don't know in those instances. Anywho, enough about that. But again, someone that I know folks are excited about, and what he's able to do with the ball in his hands is really good stuff. Absolutely. Moving on to Brashard Smith out of Southern Methodist University. We are talking about a player who went to the combine, measured in at 5'10", 194 pounds, runs the 4.39, which you like to see, a 4.39. You don't love to see the 194 pounds at 5'10". 32.5-inch vertical jump, not the explosion that you'd hope for from a guy that size, and 9'9" broad jump. Also, not great in that respect. However, what you can say is great is his one season at SMU after he transfers out of the University of Miami, Florida, goes to SMU, gets 235 carries for 1,332 yards, Zach. That's 5.7 yards per carry. That's 14 touchdowns on the ground. And mind you, for the same SMU team that made the college football playoff, 39 catches, 327 yards, and 4 touchdowns through the air. Brashard Smith, while not the biggest of the bunch, certainly one of the most productive, especially in this catch-all group, Zach.
Versatility is valuable, JMic. Being able to fill multiple roles is a surefire way to endear yourself to management or a coaching staff if you happen to be fortunate enough to find yourself in that position. Brashard Smith was ranked the 24th wide receiver prospect in the country coming out of high school. Big deal, you might say, except for this past season, Smith rushed for that 1,300 yards, those 14 touchdowns, caught those 39 passes, and he rolled up 320 kick return yards on top of all that. One of the things that initially jumps out about Brashard Smith's tape is how often he is moved around the formation. He can run routes out of the backfield, but he can also be split out wide and beat corners as well. Behind the line of scrimmage, he's almost 2 separate, distinct backs. The quick cutter who can get himself out of trouble in a flash, and also the back who stops to piston his feet while he makes a decision. Outside of the tackles, I think Smith is generally quick and bursty, getting upfield for positive gains. Once he's moving, Smith is a slippery, elusive runner. He sheds those tackles, and you like to see that.
It reminds me of the NCAA video game. I haven't played the new one, but the old one where there would consistently be the backs that were so quick, and if you get them in the juke animation, Zach, they're just making people kind of like just fall and melt off of them like butter.
Yeah,
and that's what Brashard Smith reminds me so much of when I watch him play. And you talk about lightning, you talk about quick on his feet, you talk about someone who is consistently making the most of the opportunities and the little space and opportunity given. I think that he's consistently doing those things, especially in the passing game, and especially when we think about being in any sort of space. His ability to make people miss in space is going to have to be the thing that he really leans on at the next level, because without that, I'm not confident that he's going to be getting the work in between the tackles. And even if he did get the work in between tackles, I'm not confident that he's going to be able to break those tackles consistently, because that's not something that we saw at SMU when it came to between the tackles and his tough running in that regard. So while he does have the big play speed, we do see the ability to be able to open things up and really make plays when given any kind of area to an opportunity to do so. Grinding out the tough yards is not something that Brashard Smith did or projects to do at the next level. What else did you see in his game that you didn't love, Zach?
Yeah, an interesting issue with being as fast as Brashard Smith is that sometimes I think he actually moves faster than he processes. This leads to him either running full speed into a tackler or stopping to process at the line of scrimmage while he stutters his feet. Either way, bad things happen. So much of Smith's success comes from his speed and quickness, which makes it incredibly frustrating that his reaction to impending contact is to slow down, negating that best asset. Brashard Smith feels like a player who will get on the field by hook or by crook. He does too many things to be ignored, but it feels a little bit like he'll be a versatile backup. The guy who can make plays on third down, return kicks, fill in admirably in a pinch. His pass catching ability makes him interesting, but there are so many pieces that are going to have to break right for him to fall into enough carries to be truly impactful for fantasy, at least in my opinion.
Way too much. And as you say, Zach, if you're consistently doing the things that work against your primary strength on the field, I don't know how that's going to serve you well at the next level. Again, wildly productive and a really fun watching many instances in this past season at SMU. And I struggled to see the full picture, even with his versatility and the fun that can be leveraged in that respect. I struggle to see how that plays into consistent work. Leave that there. On to the next one, which is the last one. Raheim Sanders, aka Rocket Sanders, originally getting work done at Arkansas for an offense that was kind of fun. They did some positive things. I think he was around when Treylon Burks was around, if I can recall, Zach. He wasn't eligible to come out just yet, but someone that people were excited about for a long time. 6 feet, 217 pounds, and went to the combine, ran a 4.46, and jumped 36.5-inch vertical jump. When we think through his actual exploits on the field, his best season was the 2022 season at Arkansas, in which he amassed 1,443 yards, 6.5 yards per carry, 10 touchdowns. He was getting things done, Zach, and unfortunately, injury bug hits in 2023. And after that injury bug hit, then he leaves Arkansas, transfers to South Carolina to be a Gamecock. For what reason? I don't know. Didn't do the research to be. No, I'm just kidding. Shout out to all the folks at that USC, all the folks who support them. But 183 carries at South Carolina, 881 yards, 11 touchdowns. We did also see 27 catches for 316 yards and 2 scores for the Gamecocks. Raheim Sanders, really, really shining star when we think about what he was doing in that sophomore season, Zach. Came back to earth, and similar to the likes of an Ollie Gordon or Braylon Allen the year before, or Chuba Hubbard a couple seasons before, as we've highlighted previously, guys who really saw their star shine, stay in school for whatever reason, and so much of the light fades from who they were and who we saw them to be. So in this complex, crazy world of Raheim Sanders, the prospect, what are we to believe about his game, Zach?
A typical Atlas V rocket propels itself around at 22,000 miles an hour. Raheim Rocket Sanders hit 23.55 miles per hour at the combine, making him the fastest running back to attend Indianapolis. So it's not just a clever nickname. There's no countdown when Sanders takes off, but his burst to and through the line of scrimmage is incredibly quick. especially considering that he's carrying 217-pound payload. He's not just fast in a straight line, though. Sanders is a fluid cutter as well, creating angles when he gets into space. And when running inside, he gets skinny through the hole and routinely identifies two of his linemen together and splits them. It's really fun to watch him kind of pick that hole that's not really there. It's just the guard and the tackle, the rear end together, and he just gets through. And in short yardage situations, Sanders is strong enough to churn his legs and move a pile to get the hard yards. So it's really an interesting dichotomy to see a player that fast, but also be that big pile mover.
Yeah, and even though I don't see him as the smoothest of movers like we were talking about for DJ Giddens, I do find it fascinating that regardless of that, still a decisive player, still finds small spaces to be able to make big plays and makes the most specifically. And a lot of the guys that we've talked about having success in the interior runs in this group, he's one that I do like on the edge. And I do like his ability to be able to make the most of outside runs while consistently defeating angles, whether it be at Arkansas or at South Carolina, at a high rate. And I don't know why maybe he wasn't getting a ton more work this past season. And I know that South Carolina had the issue where the quarterback got hurt and ended up coming back and things were kind of weird. But Raheim Sanders, I feel like there's so much meat on the bone to be figured out here because we've seen him do great things, and I don't feel like we saw him get back to that same height of heights. So what, Zach, at least in your mind, are we looking at when we're thinking about a player who shined as bright as anyone in this class, almost anyone in this class previously, and is now an afterthought in the minds of so many players?
So that speed as a weapon can be a double-edged sword. Sanders can be impatient to use that burst. Sometimes he gets to the line of scrimmage before his blockers have set up those running lanes. In spite of his cutting ability in space, I don't think he's particularly elusive in short areas. This is in part due to his uninspiring lateral quickness, but also due to that lack of creativity. He struggles to get past a defender who has squared him up. Sanders is dangerous on screens. So if you can use him in the traditional, like little running back dump offs, he's great. But outside of those simple routes to the flat, I think his ability to create in the passing game is pretty limited. It seems very plausible that Raheim Sanders turned heads with his combine performance. Couple his speed with his 6 foot, 217-pound size, and it's a tantalizing combination for a ball carrier. I think he's primarily a between the tackles runner, but can get outside. So it will be interesting to see where he lands and how soon he can commandeer carries, because I do think there's some talent there.
And it messes with me because I think back to someone like a Chase Brown, and to be clear, I don't see them as similar, same players. But I remember, and you and I discussed, Zach, watching Chase Brown and just thinking, man, I wish there was more. I just want more. And I think I would be so much higher on Raheim Sanders if there was a component to his game where he was consistently making people miss and maximizing early, specifically at the line of scrimmage in those regards when things aren't always blocked incredibly well. And I think that if he had that consistent creativity, maneuverability, and shiftiness, I think I'd be pretty excited. But without that, I'm not sure that you're going to live on a long run diet at the next level if you're not the top guy, but you're also not consistently making people miss near the line of scrimmage. It's fascinating because I just remember watching his film and I'm like, man, there's a lot of things I like and I want so much more. So yeah, we'll see.
It's really kind of indicative of this class. There's so many players who do things well that do translate into fantasy points, which is where we're fishing. That's the fishing hole we're dipping our pole in, and that's what makes this class so much fun, and is going to make the NFL draft important, landing spots important, but also, man, when you get into your rookie drafts, you're going to have to make some decisions where now we're a piece of your process. And now you have to take what we see, you have to take the other information you get and come out with a decision, in another month.
Oh man, Zach. For those listening to this at any other point, today is April 1st. And that means that we are in draft month. Golly.
Yeah.
I gotta get my head out of these rocks. What is going on? I don't know where time went. Okay, Zach. That now brings us to 20 backs, 18 backs. Sorry.
Yeah.
18 running backs that we've been able to get eyes on, to be able to check out their tape. And now is the portion of the program, Zach, where we figure out, okay, 18 backs. You've already mentioned that a vast majority of them are guys that you are quite interested in. Talk to us a little bit about where each player stands.
So I'll give you these 6 in order, and then I'll give you my overarching. But for this group that we watched tonight, LeQuint Allen is my one. I was not ready for him to be the one. He snuck up on me. I was unsuspecting. DJ Giddens is 2. Raheim Sanders is 3. Tuten 4. There's a decent gap. Martinez, and then another gap for Brashard Smith. But now when we do the overarching class, there is a really a top tier of one of Ashton Genty for me. There's a second tier of one Quinshon Judkins, and I know that that's not chalk, but in 2 years from now, I bet it will be. 3 is a third tier of, and the order of this doesn't really make a bit of difference to me because they're all so close, but Trevion Henderson, Amarian Hampton, LeQuint Allen, Scattaboo, and Ollie Gordon. That's a pretty big tier, but a bunch of really talented players. The draft probably shakes that out a little bit. The next group is another big group with Caleb Johnson, Dylan Sampson, DJ Giddens, Raheim Sanders, Taj Brooks, all in there. There's another little gap. I have Bhayshul Tuten. Another gap, RJ Harvey. Another gap, Damien Martinez and Devin Neal. And beyond there be monsters with Jordan James. We haven't even talked about Trevor Etienne, but he's down there. Brashard Smith and Kal-El Mullings. Kal-El, like Superman, is the bottom of my list.
And people are gonna say you hating, Zach, because we didn't even talk Kal-El Mullings on Catch-All, and they're gonna be like, oh, where's this coming from? Where's this hate coming from?
They'll have to donate to Fantasy Cares and get the write-ups, because there will be a Kal-El Mulling write-up. I won't just say that he runs like a linebacker, even though he does, because he was. But there will be a write-up, and there will be, it's not quite ready yet, but at fantasycares.org slash I can't now, I'm off my game, but at fantasycares.org/campaigns there will be my rookie film notes, and all you have to do is donate to Fantasy Cares, and I will gladly, as a gift, give you my film notes, and there will be 50 or so write-ups. So And Kal-El Mullings will be there.
Oh man, I'm sorry. He'll be there.
He will.
Tough.
My favorite is, and I don't Twitter anymore, but my favorite, I tweeted out, I thought he would be better in a phone booth. And I thought that was just very clever, and nobody got it. And then I sent it to you, and I sent it to Russ Fisher, Dynasty Outhouse, and Russ laughed, and I was like, "There, I've been validated."
That's really good. That's really good. All right, amongst the players, Zach, and you and I see them similarly in that I think the brightest of the bunch. I think that's the only real difference that we have in terms of how we see them. Thankfully, I have my actual sheet sorted today, so I feel much better about this. The DJ Giddens is my tops in this group. I know that he was 2 for you, and then I have LeQuint Allen as the number 2 in this group.
Yeah,
I've got Raheim Sanders at 3, Bhayshul Tuten at 4, Damien Martinez at 5, and Brashard Smith. Actually, they have the exact same score. They just laid out uniquely here. Similar to you, tier of 1 with Ashton Genty as my top film grade in the class. And then in a tier all by himself behind Ashton Genty, I have Quinshon Judkins. And I cannot forget about what happened at Mississippi when he was at Ole Miss. And I can't forget about how he came into Travion Henderson's house and told him, I'm eating all sorts of your food. I cannot. He's an amazing player. The next group sorted to a degree would be Caleb Johnson at 3, Cam Scatterboo at 4, Travion Henderson at 5, and then I got Omarion Hampton with a film grade at 6. And I like Omarion Hampton a good bit. And again, if the NFL is going to be taking him in the first round, then you can just forget anything that I have to say about these film grades because
but no, like it's to me, the reason why we do this, and I don't mean to cut you off, but the self-deprecation, but the reason why we do this is to have where we think these players are talent-wise on film. And so then when he gets the draft capital, sure, maybe that brings him to the top of your tier, but that doesn't, if he gets first-round capital and say Jetty gets first-round capital, Hampton gets first-round capital, Judkins gets second, that doesn't mean Judkins is, all of a sudden tossed to the wayside because we think that he is a talented running back. He's still got capital. So it's yes, capital matters, but there's a reason why we go through all this process. Otherwise, we just sit back. I'd put my other foot up. I've only got one up right now. I'd put both of them up and we'd wait for the NFL draft and just base everything on draft capital.
And to be clear for everyone at home, I know what I'm doing if Quinshon Judkins goes in the second and Omarion goes in the first. I love Quinshon Judkins. I'm taking Quinshon Judkins ahead of him. Listen, we're part of your process. Do as you will. It's your team. You paid that entry fee. Love your life. Love your draft. And I love Quinshon Judkins. So, and I think he's a better player than Omarion Hampton. That's my opinion. I've got then a small tier of Ollie Gordon and DJ Giddens. And I actually have DJ Giddens graded out a half a point ahead of Dylan Sampson and Devin Neal. Then that brings us to the likes of LeQuint Allen, Taj Brooks, Raheim Sanders, and RJ Harvey. And then the last 4, Bhayshul Tuten, Damien Martinez, Brashard Smith, and Jordan James. Jordan James did not grade out well for me. And I know lots of people are excited about Jordan James. I'm just not. And that's okay. That's okay. But because we're still looking at I would say, at least in this group, that 15 players that I think is a really, really interesting bunch with my top 15 film grades. I think coming down to Bhayshul Tuten, I think is the line for me for interesting watches and players. So yeah, this is a really fun group, and I think the top is a lot of fun. I think we had a lot, Zach, in terms of players that we did not expect to be as high as we would have thought when we began this process. When I think about how high Scatterboo is for both of us, when I think about the likes of DJ Giddens and LeQuint Allen being where they are for each of us as well, and even the guy like Taj Brooks, who I think was a little bit more shocking for each of us on film. And I think that both of us also, neither of us are probably as high as market on Omarion Hampton. Neither of us, I know for sure, are as high on Dylan Sampson or Devin Neal or RJ Harvey or Jordan James in terms of the overall landscape. So this has been a really fun class for us to parse out, for us to talk through. But I like, obviously, the process that we've continued to go through. And man, this is a good group. This is a good group, Zach.
This has been so much fun, kind of reinvigorating with a class like this where, and I know I said it back at the beginning of the Hootenanny. I know I said it when we did the Optimus Primer. I know I said it even before that, but this is a Mesa class, not a mountain class, where, and what I mean by that is like the peak isn't necessarily like, we don't have a Christian McCaffrey, we don't have a Saquon Barkley. Ashton Genty is like half a tier like down for me, but not like, that's not saying he's down. Like you're talking, Saquon is the highest grade I've ever given out. CMC was right up there. He's in that group of, this is a special running back. But then you just got an incredible group of backs that could all come in and be productive. There probably aren't even enough spots for all of these backs, but they will carve out spots eventually. It's just so much fun. Tosh Brooks reminds me so much of Kareem Hunt, like so much. And I don't like, I hate comps, but like watching him get skinny and then all of a sudden, it's like, it's a really interesting group and a fun group. We'll be back again, I think, next week and do a few more. I've been watching some wide receivers. There are probably a couple more running backs. I still want to get eyes on at least one more quarterback that we haven't talked about yet. And so it may be, we may throw in like a bonus, like a bonus player or something. I don't know. We'll figure it out. We'll figure out who we're going to watch and what's going to happen. But as always, feel free to let us know who you'd like us to put eyes on, because we'll try to do that. And even if we don't get to it in the catch-all shows, I will try to do a write-up for you, and you can donate to fantasycares.org/campaigns. Find the Dynasty Dummies, Rookie Hootenanny, my film notes, and I'll do my best to deliver for you. So this has been so much fun. It was great to be back. I appreciate everybody. The chat has been hopping. We've had 850 people pop in, at least put eyes on us tonight, which is wild to me.
That's crazy.
We've been so fortunate to have the platform we've got through Fantasy Cares. So fortunate to be able to do this with the Dynasty Dummies podcast. Fortunate for me, JMic, to be doing this with you. It is a joy every week to chop things up with you. It's just my favorite place to be with my favorite people, and it's just been a lot of fun. We'll run it back next week. It'll be excellent. If you were in the chat, we appreciate you. If you're listening on the podcast side of things, We appreciate you as well. The Dynasty Dummies are at Dynasty Dummies. JMic is at JMic Check. I am at Tacit Assassin 13 over there on Blue Sky. And this has been the Dynasty Dummies. Thank you for listening. Peace.